Part 28. Fantasy, Me. Create a secret building at the beginning. Author, Mavericks Flying. Chapter 271. A Quasi-Emperor level item. Yang Jian opened the folding fan with a swish sound, and nodded gently to the middle-aged Quasi-Emperor behind him. The latter understood. He quickly stepped forward and placed a bottle of elixir in front of Li Yun. Li Yun put away the elixir. He didn't take it seriously and said, "You guessed it right. It was indeed me who made the two worlds Zixuan and Tianyuan merge into one." Really? Yang Jian was shocked. As a result, the strength of the poster in front of him is initially estimated to be above the true immortal realm. Even much stronger than his ancestor. This result is beyond reason, but it is also expected. It's a blessing among misfortunes. If it wasn't the senior poster who took action, but there was someone else behind the scenes, it would be a lot of fun. Senior, that Fang Han. Yang Jian was halfway through his words when his mind moved and he changed the question and asked, "Dare I ask, Senior, does the inheritance left by the ancestors of Fang Han need to be opened by the descendants of the Fang family? And seniors, do you know the whereabouts of this inheritance?" Originally, he wanted to inquire about the whereabouts of Fang Han. But then he realized it. Not every inheritance can only be opened by descendants. At present, confirming the whereabouts of this inheritance is much more important than that of Fang Han. Even if someone from the Fang clan can open it, he knows where the inheritance is. Do you still need to worry? Fang Han won't come to your door by himself? Two great saint level items. Li Yun raised two fingers. Easy to say. Yang Jian's smile did not change. Two great saint level items are nothing in his eyes. If you rely on these things, you can get a true immortal inheritance, which can be said to be a big profit. The middle-aged Quasi-Emperor stepped forward and took out the money again. He produced two great saint level items and placed them in front of Li Yun. I naturally know the whereabouts of the true immortal inheritance. As for whether it needs to be opened by the descendants of the Fang family, I can only tell you, yes or no. Li Yunfan said lightly. This. Yang Jian's expression froze. What does this mean? In such a sentence, two great saint level items. For you, you cannot break into the inheritance of the true immortal. You can only wait for its birth, and the conditions for its birth need to be opened by the descendants of the Fang family. Li Yun said casually. According to the original timeline, it would take about 10 years. When Fang Han was being hunted down, he would inadvertently open up the inheritance left by his ancestor. Now, everything is happening with the ground. The space passage in the immortal world is broken and has changed. In the future, whether the true immortal inheritance will still appear in the world according to the original time, no one can tell. Maybe it won't take 10 years, maybe it will never appear again. The Zixuan world and Tianyuan world, the living beings can wait, but everyone in the earthly immortal realm cannot wait any longer. With a smile in his eyes, Li Yun picked up the teacup and took a sip, and continued. But such a heritage is not absolute. If someone above the true immortal takes action, even without relying on the descendants of the Fang family, they can forcefully open this inheritance. The inheritance of the true immortal has little meaning to the true immortal. Without that true immortal, he would do such meaningless things. For example, no great emperor would dig up the tombs left by other great emperors all over the world. It's not that they can't find it, it's that they don't want to do it because it's too taboo. After all, it's possible for them to sit down and die. After they die, will someone follow my example and dig their own grave? Senior means, are you planning to take action? Yang Jian said uncertainly. If the senior poster takes action, then they don't have to play anymore and they can't beat them at all. Of course not. Li Yun shook his head. Now, even he himself doesn't know where the true immortal inheritance is, and he can't find it if he wants to take action. By the time he finds out, Many people will probably have spent money to buy information. Then he can take action. It's a bit worth the loss. Tianji Tower's huge reputation is not easy to establish, and he doesn't want to give it up in vain. Hearing Li Yun's reply, Yang Jian breathed a sigh of relief. He asked softly, can the senior reveal that this is really true? Where is the immortal inheritance? You can't afford it? Li Yun said directly. The whereabouts of the true immortal inheritance are indeed not expensive. But if he sells it, it will become a one-time deal, and the subsequent news will not be of much value. Because the place has been found. Only all you need to do is find Fang Han. The solution lies with Fang Han. With Fang Han, any force can open the inheritance of the true immortal. Even if Fang Han has a trump card in his hand, he can't hold it back. Chased by countless powerful men, a jade pendant only has 3 chances. He has already used it once, and the remaining 2 times, he can't hold on for long. It doesn't take 2 great emperors to take action, only one can wear him to death. In this way, wouldn't he have earned countless Tianji points less from his Tianji tower? For his own sake, Li Yun planned to package and sell the entire true immortal heritage together. It was impossible to just buy one whereabouts, so he had to buy them all. Or don't even think about knowing even a little bit of news. Senior. Yang Jian frowned and asked, is this true immortal inheritance really so precious? He asked himself. He brought a lot of good things with him this time to the lower world. Not to mention compared to a force in the Tianyuan world, but compared with the entire net worth of a quasi-emperor, it surpassed it too much. To a certain extent. Even the emperor is not as rich as him. But now, the senior still says that he cannot afford it. This is a bit exaggerated. Good. Li Yun nodded lightly, raised his hand and said, if you want to find this true immortal inheritance, you need at least 2 true immortal level items. Can you take them out? 2 pieces, true immortal level items. Yang Jian's breath was stagnant. This value. Let alone him. Even if his ancestor came, it would be difficult to take it out. It is too precious. At the time, the ancestor of the Fang family, the inheritance he left was just a true immortal technique. Of course. It's not ruled out that he also left other good things behind, but are these things really worth 2 true immortal level items when added together? This point has to be put a question mark. Even if it's worth it, the value probably won't exceed much. But if it's not worth it, it's a big loss. Senior, is there any room for change? Yang Jian said in a deep voice. In the past, the holy son of Yugzu Palace, who was so aloof, now had to lower his head to bargain. Of course there is. Li Yun nodded. He didn't expect that Yugzu Palace alone could swallow up the entire true immortal inheritance. Such a huge price. No one in the Zixuan realm and Tianyuan realm can afford it. There may be some top ones in the earthly immortal realm. Power can be afforded, but they probably won't be willing to part with it. It's impossible to sell it to one person or one power. Then it can only be sold to a group of people or a group of power. As for the true immortal inheritance, whose hands will it end up in? Then it depends on their ability. Li Yun flicked his palm, and a jade slip flew out, turned into a stream of light, and fell into Yang Jian's hand. Yang Jian had a puzzled look on his face. He stretched out his hand to catch the jade slip, and with his spiritual consciousness he poked his head into it and took a look. Before he could see the contents clearly, he was bounced out by a terrifying force. Senior, this is? Yang Jian asked. The whereabouts of the true immortal inheritance and how to crack the various formations in it. Li Yongzi said narrowly. Is what the senior said true? Yang Jian was overjoyed. He stood up with a bang, a little confused. Why did the senior who asked for 2 true immortal level items just now give away this news in vain the next moment? Could it be that Senior thinks he is pleasing to the eye, so he plans to give himself a favor? But if it's a favor, why are there still restrictions in this jade slip? With the ban blocking it, I can't see any of the content. If you can't see the content, then this jade slip is the same as the other one and has no effect. But the senior has made it clear that the jade slip contains the whereabouts of the true immortal's inheritance. Not only that, details of various formations are also recorded. This way, the content was like a piece of cake, attracting his attention all the time. Fantasy, me. Create a secret building at the beginning. Author, Mavericks Flying. Chapter 272. Senior, what do you mean? Yang Jian asked. He glanced at the jade slip again, and after confirming that the restriction still existed, he could no longer hold back his doubts. This is the middle ground. Li Yun glanced at Yang Jian and said eloquently, Yugzu Palace cannot afford the complete inheritance of the true immortal, so it has to cooperate with others, do you understand? Cooperate with others. Yang Jian was stunned. He somewhat understood what the senior poster meant. Is this a reminder for himself to buy with others? He himself had no objection. Anyway, the inheritance of the true immortal was from Yugzu Palace, and before the lower world, he had already be prepared for a hard battle. After all, the birth of a true immortal inheritance is not a trivial matter. It will definitely move the clouds in all directions. It is reasonable for the emperor to participate in the war. But whether others will come to buy the news? He said, no, that's right. What if everyone is waiting for others to buy news from Tianjilu, and they sit back and watch, and then take advantage of the situation? Then wouldn't they have suffered a big loss? More importantly, if no one buys the news, that place is the immortal inheritance stillborn? By now, Yang Jian has almost figured it out. In the final analysis, this inheritance is not in the hands of Fang Han, but the senior poster in front of him has the final say as to when he will be born. The inheritance is when will I be born? If I just spend my money and the inheritance doesn't come out in the end, then I won't have anywhere to cry. Rest assured. Li Yun waved his hand, raised his head and glanced into the void. A smile appeared at the corner of his mouth, and he said casually, this true immortal inheritance will not be hidden for long. The matter of true immortal inheritance may not be widely spread in the Tianyuan world. But in the Zixuan world, many big forces have received the news. After all, not everyone who comes from the earthly immortal world is like Yang Jian, who has a quasi-emperor follow me. Some people who try to fish in troubled waters have long been secretly killed by the creatures of the Zixuan realm. It is not difficult to check their memories. Therefore, the news of the inheritance of the true immortal caused an uproar in the Zixuan realm. Where I saw it, people from the immortal realm rushed to the Tianyuan realm. How could some of the big forces in the Zixuan realm and the great emperors sit still? As long as they followed the footsteps of Yang Jian and others, they would naturally find the Tianji Tower. At that time, these people, anyone who has the slightest curiosity about the inheritance of the true immortal, will definitely pay for it. Just now, Li Yun reached out with his spiritual consciousness and took a look at the border between the two realms. He has already noticed that many big forces have begun to cross the border. Among them, the Emperor of Thailand and others. The great Emperor of the Zixuan realm has even reached the hinterland of the Tianyuan realm. There are also several old monsters from the Zixuan realm who also hide their identities and rush towards the Tianji Tower. Although they realized it later, their reactions were honest. It can be said that it is extremely easy to search the souls of several creatures in the purple mystic realm and deduce the causes and consequences. Withdrawing his spiritual consciousness, Li Yun seemed to have seen a large wave of secret points on the way. His mood became much lighter. Raising one hand, Li Yun pointed to the jade slip in Yang Jian's hand and said softly, all the secrets of the inheritance of the true immortal are already inside. When the inheritance comes to the present, the restrictions in the jade slips will naturally disappear. But how much information you can get depends on how much value you can pay. Won't hide for too long. Hear these words. Yang Jian breathed a sigh of relief. In this way, he relieved himself of some worries. What he was most worried about was that he bought the news, but the true immortal inheritance has not yet been born. If it drags on for hundreds of thousands of years, the jade slips in your hands can probably be regarded as a kind of heritage and left to future generations. Senior, you just said that you can get as much information as you pay for it. If the information is obtained, it is not what this junior needs. Yang Jian said in a deep voice. What you want, isn't it the cultivation method of the ancestor of the Fang family? Li Yun said with a half smile but not a smile. His eyes were extremely deep, like a river of stars. He could see through everyone's heart, making people feel panic for no reason. It was as if all his thoughts could not be hidden from the people in front of him. Of course. Li Yunlin laughed and added another sentence, saying if you can find some insights into breaking through the true immortals in the inheritance of true immortals, that would be great. Am I right? Well. Yang Jian's expression froze. He looked like he had seen a ghost. At first. Before he goes down to the next world. This is something that the ancestor personally ordered. Unexpectedly, the senior poster in front of me said it casually, as if he was standing next to it at that time. I have given you the news you want, but whether you can see it depends on whether you can pay enough for it. After Li Yun said this, he stopped talking. Instead, he picked up the tea in his hand, took a sip, and waited patiently for Yang Jian's response. Little Lord. The middle-aged quasi-emperor next to him took a step forward, walked to Yang Jian, and said softly, how about taking a long-term approach? In the Tianji Tower, nothing can be hidden from the senior building owner. Instead of secretly transmitting the message, it is better to speak out openly. He is really a little worried that his holy son will take all the belongings in a flash of his mind. Come out just to buy a piece of illusory news. News that cannot be seen with exact information is just illusory in his eyes. At this point, Li Yun didn't say much. At present, he does not force these people to buy or not to buy. After all, they are not living beings in the Tianyuan world, and they have no intuitive feeling for the reputation of Tianji Tower. After they come to their senses, want to regret. That would be embarrassing. The value must double and rise. No need. Yang Jian raised his hand and said with firm eyes. He flapped the folding fan gently in a very rhythmic manner. After a few breaths, he seemed to make up his mind. Average determination. He opened his mouth and ordered, go and talk to a few senior brothers and ask them to take out all the resources in their hands, leaving only weapons and life-saving items. Send all the rest to me. What? The middle-aged quasi-emperor was shocked. In the Yugzi Palace. Due to the sparse number of people. Even among people of the same generation, the age gap between them may be tens of thousands of years. Although the senior brother mentioned by Yang Jian is not a true disciple of Yugzi Palace. But the cultivation level of each of them is around the level of a great saint. Their wealth is extremely rich. Take it all out now. Is my holy son determined to buy this news? Buying news, to be honest, it will not be blocked, but the content of this news cannot be viewed until the true immortal heritage is born. At that time, if the news is wrong, what should I do if I wait for someone else? He didn't dare to say these words, but the expression on his face betrayed what he was thinking. As a senior, I would naturally not lie to a junior like me, and hundreds of millions of living beings in the Tianyuan realm highly respect my senior. If my senior were in the earthly immortal realm, my reputation will probably get even better. Yang Jian said confidently. As a transcendent force, Tianji Tower can convince all living beings in the Tianyuan world and spread the deeds of the owner of Tianji Tower everywhere. This point allowed Yang Jian to dispel his last doubt. Go ahead and do it. Yang Jian waved his hand and said. Yes. The middle-aged quasi-emperor sighed softly, turned around and stepped out of the Tianji tower. He came back after a while with a few more storage rings in his hands. As the leader of the lower realm this time. He is also the first disciple of the third generation. Yang Jian has an absolute with the right to speak. He asked for these people's storage rings, and no one dared to refuse. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Fantasy, me. Create a secret building at the beginning. Author, Mavericks Flying. Chapter 273. Young Master, they are all here. The middle-aged quasi-emperor handed over the storage ring in his hand. Yang Jian didn't hesitate at all. He raised his palm and a storage ring flew out of his hand and landed in front of Li Yun together with the others. Senior, this is the greatest price a junior can pay. Don't know. How much information can be exchanged from the seniors? Yang Jian asked tentatively. You will naturally know then. Li Yun glanced at these storage rings and raised his eyebrows. He didn't see it. These people are quite wealthy. Among them are several quasi-emperor level magical powers, half a quasi-emperor level elixir, and a broken emperor's weapon. Handle. This broken imperial weapon still has some power. It should not be the trump card of Yang Jian and others, otherwise they would not take it out so easily. The value of these things is enough to compare with the entire heritage of some weak holy places. Li Yun collected all these things, glanced at the two of them, and said, the inheritance left by the Fang family's ancestors contains everything you want. When the inheritance is started, just take a look at the records in the jade slips. After speaking, Li Yun waved his hand and said lightly. Go ahead. The juniors resigned. Yang Jian handed over his hand. He didn't stay long, turned around and left the Tianji tower with the guardian. Just now. Li Yun's last words were like a reassurance, temporarily letting them relax. The first time they leave. The deserted city. In an attic. Ao Xian's eyes lit up, he turned his head, looked at the door of Tianji tower, and said. Out. It seems that the inheritance of your ancestors is about to be born. Meng Qingzi turned to look at Fang Han, with a look of anticipation in his eyebrows. Two seniors, it's time for us to go to Tianji Tower. Fang Han urged. He had just seen that the middle-aged man who followed Yang Jian into the Tianji building turned around and came out again shortly after entering. When he went back again, he had a few storage items in his hand. Ring. The purpose of the other parties doing this is obviously to raise resources and buy information. If Yugzu Palace is allowed to take the lead, they will have nothing to do. Even if it is the inheritance left by their ancestors, it may not eventually belong to them. Wait a moment. Meng Qingzi raised his hand to signal Fang Han to be calm. He pointed not far away. He saw three figures coming together in the void. Their auras condensed to the extreme. It is difficult for people below the Emperor to detect their existence. These three terrifying creatures did not stop at all after entering the great desert city. Their goals were extremely clear and they walked straight into the Tianji Tower. They are the three great emperors of Zixuan realm. Ao Xian looked ugly. Here. If there is anyone who has dealt with the Zixuan realm the most, it must be him. Currently, there are three active emperors in the Zixuan realm. He has fought against almost all of them. His performance cannot be said to be dazzling, but at least he is still passable. I am already familiar with the auras of these three emperors to the point where I cannot be familiar with them anymore. At this critical moment, the three emperors of Zixuan realm arrived together. The purpose is self-evident. They also learned the news about the inheritance of the true immortal. Want to get a share of the pie. Needless to say, the financial resources of these three terrifying beings. Among them, especially Emperor Tai and Emperor Moun, they have terrifying forces under their command and have extremely deep foundations. Once they want to buy information. True immortal inheritance, but it's hanging. They don't take the Yugzu palace in the earthly immortal realm seriously, it's just a quasi-emperor, but these three, they have to be vigilant. Wrong. After Tai Huang and the others entered the Tianji Tower, it didn't take long. Meng Qingzi's expression changed again. He looked at the front of the Tianji Tower. At some point, two figures appeared at the door. These two figures were with the Emperor Tai. People rushed forward and backward. They were just a step behind, but at this moment they were blocked from the door. Unable to step into the Tianji Tower. When did these two appear? Meng Qingzi raised his hand and pointed at the two figures at the door of Tianji building. At this point, there are not many beings who can hide from his own detection. If anyone is stomping their feet, the whole world will tremble. A trembling horror figure. Not sure. Ao Xian shook his head. The words have not yet finished. Two misty figures in front of the Tianji Tower turned around. Chaos and mist rolled around them, and two eyes like divine swords split the void. Extremely sharp. Let the void become distorted. Just one glance made Ao Xian and Meng Qingzi's hair stand on end at the same time, and a sense of crisis arose in their hearts. After taking a look at Meng Qingzi and others, the two figures seemed to have remembered the ban on Dawang City, and seemed to have lost interest in a few people. They turned around and waited quietly in front of the Tianji Tower. Great Emperor. Meng Qingzi took a breath of cold air. The extremely ancient emperor. Ao Xian's face was equally solemn. The auras of these two emperors were very unfamiliar. I don't know whether they were the emperors from the Zixian realm or the Tianyuan realm. They carried the aura of time. They seemed to be ancient gods and demons crawling out of the tomb. Even if they were ancient gods and demons crawling out of the grave, every move has the power to crush the universe. Just looking at each other, Ao Xian and Meng Qingzi quickly confirmed each other's origins. They must be from a restricted area. At this time, they heard the rumors of the inheritance of the true immortal. They jumped directly come out. I want to take this opportunity as my own and take it one step further. Have people like this come looking for the poster. Meng Qingzi frowned. As a result, the news of the birth of the true immortal heritage may be more serious than he imagined. Fantasy, me. Create a secret building at the beginning. Author, Mavericks Flying. Chapter 274. Do we still have a chance? Ao Xian murmured. He looked at the two figures shrouded in the mist of chaos not far away, and felt powerless. This is just the beginning. Wait a moment. It is estimated that other great emperors will come. The matter of the inheritance of the true immortals, not it will be hidden for too long. By that time, the cultivation level will not reach the level of the great emperor. If you go in and get involved hastily, you will definitely die. With the two restricted area great emperors coming forward, Ao Xian felt that he and Meng Qingzi were already a bit out of sight. He had just become emperor, and his realm had just been stabilized. Among all the great emperors, he belonged to the weakest echelon. Although he knew it in his heart, he never said it. As for Meng Qingzi, not even an imperial soldier. He walked the formation together, with the formation set up, and without the formation, it can be said that he was the two great emperors. If only Ling Xiao could be pulled over. If the three of them are traveling together, they might be able to spar with the three great emperors of Zixuan realm. But the idea? Just think about it. Although Ling Xiao and Meng Qingzi both belong to the human race, they are too dissatisfied with each other. They will definitely take action when they meet. Getting them to cooperate is even harder than climbing to the sky. More importantly, although Meng Qingzi does not have imperial weapons, he does have other people's imperial weapons. And Ling Xiao. He is the poorest emperor, bar none. Not to mention the imperial soldiers, they don't even have any subordinate forces. If they weren't for their own unparalleled combat prowess, I'm afraid they wouldn't even be able to retain a name after millions of years. Chance? Meng. King Z squinted from the corner of his eyes. He calmed down, glanced at Aotian, and said calmly, there must be some. But the premise is whether we can pay enough value. Enough value? Aotian was startled. He looked at Meng Qingzi in disbelief. Is it possible that Meng Qingzi wants to ask the senior poster to take action? This is unlikely. He still owes the senior 3 items of quasi-emperor level. Please ask the senior to take action again. There will inevitably be heavy bleeding. The key is that it is hard to say whether the senior is willing to take action, and he and others can invite him. What about the others? With the temper of the senior poster, Aotian feels that the bottom line is the bottom line for the senior poster to take action to save his life. No, it's impossible to help them kill a certain emperor. Just wait and see. Meng Qingzi said casually without explaining. From the perspective of seniors, how long do we have to wait? Fang Han asked. The inheritance of his ancestors is about to be lost. He is not as patient as the 2 old monsters. In his opinion, go to Tianji Tower for a while now. Get some news before everyone else. Which is equivalent to seizing the opportunity and planning it calmly. By the time you finally enter the Tianji Tower, it may be too late. Still too young. Meng. Qingzi smiled mysteriously, stroking his beard and shaking his head slightly, and said, today I will teach you a lesson, and by the way, I will tell you a truth, the one who laughs at the end is the winner. There is a saying that strikes before you strike. Have you, the creatures in the immortal world, heard of it? Fang Han. We have a saying in the immortal world, which is to strike first is to gain the upper hand. When Meng Qingzi heard this, the smile on his face froze. All right. Aotian waved his hand next to him, interrupting the 2 of them. He asked in a deep voice, are you going to learn the method of your former disciple Yang Qiu? Yang Qiu played a trick in the secret realm of creation. He paid the minimum price and finally made a lot of money. The harvest was no less than that of the Ye Imperial clan and the Golden Crow clan. This matter has been reported. Many forces have learned about it. People in other worlds may not know it clearly, but the creatures in the Tianyuan world have all remembered it in their hearts. Now a true immortal inheritance has been born. There are many people who want to imitate Yang Qiu. After all, as long as someone enters the Tianji Tower and the former does not come out, there will always be a restriction at the entrance of the Tianji Tower, and it is impossible for the latecomers to step into it. With this factor, once the true immortal inheritance is opened, at the moment it is opened, send someone in Tianji Tower. This is an opportunity to make a big difference with a small gain. Even if the true immortal inheritance place is a meat-grinding ground, all the great emperors will take action, but with the senior owner of the building beside you, what else do you need to worry about? You can plan for anything in advance, basically no need to worry about your life. You can even make a lot of money. Hearing Yang Qiu's name, a trace of pride flashed across Meng Qingzi's face, and he smiled and said, although my disciple is not very strong, my brain is still quite lively. However, as an ancestor of Yang Qiu, how can I lose the wisdom of future generations? Do you have a better way? Aotian's eyes lit up. I have to say, the human race is a unique ethnic group. There are always countless fantastic ideas, especially those of the devil. They can think of any way to benefit. Whether it can work or not depends on what the senior poster says. Meng Qingzi shook his head. Is that so? Aotian's expression did not change. He glanced at Meng Qingzi, and he was also making his own little calculation in his mind. Some time ago, to be honest, he liked Yang Qiu's method. When the time comes, let the leader of the Dragon Clan enter the Tianji building, and when he stepped into the inheritance of the true immortal, and combined with Meng Qingzi's idea, a two-pronged approach, how could he not make a fortune? Okay, deal. Ao Xian thought in his heart. The Dragon Clan has nothing but money. When others buy a piece of news, they have to search and search. They have no worries in this regard. As long as the seniors set the price, the Dragon Clan will not frown. Next to him, Fang Han looking at the two great emperors, they also lowered their heads and thought. Now he could see that these two great emperors valued their own interests most, and did not pay much attention to the inheritance of their ancestors. After all, they were not members of the Fang clan. It doesn't matter who hands the inheritance. As long as you make enough. It seems that I have to secretly buy some news from my seniors. Fang Han thought in his mind. Since he can't count on them, he can't blame himself for not cooperating with them. Holding the jade pendant given by himself in the future in his hand, he can have the cultivation of the peak of the emperor in a short time, even against some restricted areas. The great emperor, he is not timid at all. To a certain extent, Fang Han's combat power has far surpassed Meng Qingzi and Ao Xian. When the three of them were having their own thoughts in the attic, the Tianyuan world and the Zixuan world are turbulent. In front of Tianji building, all forces gathered together, including figures at the level of great sages, quasi-emperors, and even great emperors. People entered the Tianji tower every moment. Then he left expressionlessly. There is no difference between these people when they come in and when they go out. The only difference. Probably, before I went in, I still had a storage ring on my hand, but after I went out, my hands were empty. Senior poster, this speed of earning resources is too cruel. Meng Qingzi's old face twitched and he said with emotion. With so many people, there is a force behind every person who enters the Tianji tower. Their background is extraordinary. The amount of a great saint-level item produced by one person is also an astronomical figure. But how is it possible that they only took out a great saint-level item? Meng Qingzi would not be surprised at all if someone throws out an imperial scripture or an imperial weapon in the Tianji tower. Fantasy, me. Create a secret building at the beginning. Author, Mavericks Flying. Chapter 275. More than 10 days passed. In front of Tianji Tower, the number of people was much smaller. The people or forces that should come have almost already arrived. And those who don't come, some don't want to wade into the muddy waters this time. Although the inheritance of the true immortal is tempting, it must be taken with a life. And some are simply lacking in strength. About there, Meng Qingzi stood up in the attic. He took one step forward and came to the Tianji tower. Behind him, Ao Xian and Fang Han followed closely. The three of them stepped into the Tianji tower together. The first time they entered, they saw Li Yun with a warm smile inside. The junior has met the senior poster. During this period of time, do you already know the people who have been to Tianji tower? Li Yun chuckled. Among these three people, two of them are emperors. There are very few existences that can hide from their detection. Most of them have been seen by Meng Qingzi and Ao Xian. 4. Li Yun didn't say much about this. He was only responsible for ensuring that the news of these people coming to buy would not be leaked. As for what happened before entering Tianji building, he didn't care at all. If Tianji building also wants to ensure that customers will not be leaked before entering, avoiding everyone's detection. That's too tiring. They couldn't hide their identities well, and people saw clearly. What's the matter with Tianji Tower? The senior poster was joking. Even juniors have never seen or even heard of some existences. How can they be aware of them? Meng Qingzi said awkwardly. Sit down. Li Yun raised his finger and pointed to the side, casually saying, "Thank you, senior." The three of them thanked each other. They each found a chair and leaned over to sit down. "Senior." Fang Han was the first to be unable to hold himself back and asked, "Is the inheritance left by our ancestors coming to the world?" As he said this, Fang Han took out a great saint-level item and placed it on the table. He killed people from the three major forces in the earthly immortal realm. He had a lot of money, and he would probably make countless people jealous if he put it to the outside world. An hour later, Li Yun said slowly. The true immortal consciousness swept across the Tianyuan world, and he could clearly detect that there were not many people rushing to the Tianji Tower at this moment. "Now, I have earned enough Tianji points. I can almost buy 3 immortal islands. There is no point in waiting for this kind of opportunity. They are just small people and cannot provide many resources." An hour later, Fang Han's face froze. "So fast? The inheritance of the true immortal is in the Zixuan realm. If he appears in the world after an hour, I am afraid that he and others will not be able to catch up. If you can't make it, others can't make it either." Li Yunkin said. "And?" Li Yun looked at Meng Qingzi, with a half-smile on his lips, and said narrowly, "Is there any difference if you arrive a little earlier or a little later?" "Well." Meng Qingzi looked embarrassed. "I haven't said much yet, so why does it seem like my senior has seen through my thoughts again? After all, one of you has never planned to enter the land of true immortal inheritance." Li Yun said calmly. This. Fang Han's expression changed. Apart from the senior poster, there were only 3 of them present. He was certain that from beginning to end, he wanted to go in personally and take back the inheritance left by his ancestors, but the senior said that there was one person who never planned to go in. So who is this person? Thinking of this, he set his sights on Meng Qingzi. Just right. Ao Xian also looked over. He planned to let people enter the Tianji Tower, and take advantage of the birth of the real immortal to do some remote training. It would be impossible not to go in. Apart from himself and Fang Han, there is no doubt that it is Meng Qingzi. The eyes of Ao Xian and Fang Han were particularly weird. They had calculated everything, but they never expected that one of the 3 of them actually had this idea. "What do you want to do if you don't enter the land of true immortal inheritance? Do you want to be a traitor if you wait for someone to bring the inheritance to your door? What do you want me to do?" Meng Qingzi was extremely embarrassed. He spread his hands and said helplessly, "Everyone is jealous of the true immortal inheritance. Many great emperors will show up. How can we get it? You have also seen that the 3 great emperors of Zixuan realm have come in person. In addition to the 3 of them, there are many great emperors who are waiting for the opportunity. Maybe a lot of old monsters will pop up in the restricted area." Hearing these words, Fang Han and Ao Xian had different expressions. One looked serious, and the other looked hesitant. Meng Qingzi said it right. In front of the inheritance of the true immortal, nothing is important anymore. Some unimportant resources will make brothers turn against each other, not to mention the inheritance left by the supreme immortal. At that time, it must be a big war. Meng Qingzi and Ao Xian have just become emperors, and they cannot even defeat the 3 great emperors of Zixuan realm, let alone fight with them. Go in and the old monster takes action. "Senior, do you have a way to allow the junior to save his life and at the same time take the inheritance into his hands?" Ao Xian asked. "Can." Li Yun nodded. "This is difficult for others, but for him, it's nothing. It's just the price, which Ao Xian may find difficult to bear. It's smaller, the layout is smaller." Meng Qingzi shook his head slightly. He bowed his hands to Li Yun and asked what he had been thinking before. "Seniors and juniors want to know, who are the last people who come out after entering the land of true immortal inheritance? How much does this news cost?" Um. Ao Xian's eyes widened. He looked at Meng Qingzi in disbelief. What did he mean by asking this? His intuition told him that Meng Qingzi's plan was different from everyone else's. He wanted to play a big game, so he asked about this news. Aren't you afraid of offending all the great emperors and then being hunted down? Meng Qingzi didn't pay attention to the looks of Fang Han and Ao Xian, and asked again. Of course, the seniors only need to tell the juniors that there are existences above the level of a great saint, or people who have received important opportunities in the place of inheritance. It would be best to add how injured they were when they came out, whether they were serious, and what their strongest magical powers are. As expected, you people from the Nine Nether Demon sect all have your own ideas. Li Yun didn't know what he meant. He glanced at Meng Qingzi's template. How could he not understand what he was thinking? If he really followed what he had in mind, I'm afraid many people would fall for him. In his hands, after all, every great emperor thinks highly of himself. Who would think about whether someone is plotting against him? The great emperor is difficult to kill. Once he cannot kill the other party, what he will face next is endless revenge. Seniors and juniors asked for news. Meng Qingzi rubbed his hands, took out an imperial weapon, and placed it in front of Li Yun. For this news. He immediately spent a lot of money. Easy to say. Li Yun put away the imperial soldiers, checked the system, his eyes fell on Fang Han not far away, and said after the true immortal inheritance was opened, the first person who came out was, Fang Han. What? Hearing the last two words, Ao Xian and Meng Qingzi both looked at Fang Han with strange expressions. Especially Meng Qingzi. He just asked, as long as people with great sage or above, and people with huge opportunities. Fang Han is really the cultivation level is obviously not above that of a great saint. In this way, senior, no less than, Fang Han will get a shocking opportunity in the land of true immortal inheritance. At this moment, even Fang Han himself feels dizzy. Senior just now meant that he would gain huge benefits from the inheritance left by his ancestors. Others said that he would definitely not believe it. But senior poster is different. A person who can reverse the course of time, he said if you say it, no one will doubt it, and it will be whatever you say. Senior. After glancing at Fang Han, Meng Qingzi reluctantly looked back and asked again, what about the second person? The great commander of the everlasting city, Hongxian. Li Yun opened the corners of his mouth slightly and said slowly. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Fantasy, me. Create a secret building at the beginning. Author, Mavericks Flying. Chapter 276. The Eternal City. Hongxian. These two names appeared. Meng Qingzi and Ao Xian looked at each other, and they both saw the confusion in each other's eyes. No matter which one, they were extremely unfamiliar. Senior, is this the strength of the Zixuan realm or the earthly immortal realm? Meng Qingzi asked. It's not a force from the earthly immortal realm. Next to him, Fang Han shook his head. The Fang clan was quite powerful in the immortal world at the time. Most of them had heard of famous people or sects, but the words the everlasting city were extremely unfamiliar to him. It seems to be the transcendent force of Zixuan realm. Ao Xian considered. Fang Han was able to come out first because he was a descendant of the Fang clan. In the inheritance left by his ancestors, he has a unique advantage. This is unmatched by ordinary people. And the great commander of Tianhuang Eternal City was able to come out second. He definitely has his own merits, and his strength is estimated to be no weaker than ordinary old monsters. Wrong. Li Yun shook his head and said the everlasting city belongs to the Tianyuan realm. Tianyuan world. Ao Xian and Meng Qingzi's expressions changed at the same time. They asked suspiciously, are you serious about what the senior said? When have I lied to you? Li Yun's eyes widened. In the Tianyuan world, when did an eternal city appear? How come I've never heard of it? Ao Xian pondered. The dragon clan has a long history and is very ancient. Countless forces have disappeared in the long river of time, but the dragon clan still exists, and there is still the possibility of reappearing its former glory. If there is such a force. In history it left a profound mark, it was impossible for him not to have heard of it. Senior, how strong is the commander of this eternal city? Meng Qingzi asked in a deep voice. Like Ao Xian, he had never heard of the everlasting city. If it wasn't that the other party was too strong, it was that the other party was too weak to be noticed by them. Such a force, they are everywhere in the Tianyuan world. In his opinion, the commander of the Tianhuang Eternal City might be just like Fang Han, who had better luck and got some benefits from the inheritance of the true immortal. So he ran away first. Come out. Of course. It's also possible that the other party got nothing and saw the emperors taking action, so they felt timid, so they sneaked out. Hongxian, the great commander of the everlasting city, has been emperor for 890,000 years, and his strength has reached the late stage of the great emperor. Looking at the people in the entire Tianyuan world who can fight with him. Not many. Li Yuncan said. Late emperor. Meng Qingzi and Ao Xian were silent. If it hadn't come from the words of a senior, he wouldn't have believed that there was such a fierce existence in his world. Then why did the everlasting city not take action when the Zixuan realm invaded? If Hongxian came forward at that time, it is impossible for the three great emperors of Zixuan realm to come over, and there is even a possibility that they can counterattack back. One more thing is, this Hongxuan's strength is so terrifying, he is actually just a great commander. Everyone knows what position the Grand Commander holds. Above him, there is definitely a city lord. What kind of force is this in this eternal city? How many emperors are there among them? Or, is this everlasting city actually a restricted area? No need to think about it. Li Yun waved his hand, interrupted the two people's thoughts, and said although Tianhuang Eternal City is in the Tianyuan realm, it itself is not from the Tianyuan realm. Rather, it comes from a powerful world that exceeds countless levels in the Tianyuan world. The creatures in Tianhuang Eternal City have never regarded themselves as people from the Tianyuan realm. Naturally, they will not have any thoughts of protecting the Tianyuan realm. Earthly immortal realm. Meng Qingzi asked weakly. Probably only when a being above a true immortal appears in the immortal world can he barely have a glimmer of self-preservation in front of that world. Of course, it's just a glimmer. And is self-preservation. Li Yun said with a smile. His words were very plain. But when they fell in the ears of Meng Qingzi, Ao Xian, and Fang Han, they were no less than a thunderbolt in the clear sky. The current Earth immortal world has already overwhelmed them. I can't breathe. Fortunately, the space channel is broken. If the space channel is not broken, these great emperors will have no confidence at all facing the earthly immortal world. But I never thought that there would be a force today that would lead to a more terrifying world. The world has no name, but the senior said that facing that world, the earthly immortal realm is like ants. What about the Tianyuan realm where he and others are? An ant among ants? Senior, the world behind the everlasting city will not cross borders. Ao Xian asked in a low voice. Facing the Zixuan realm, he was not afraid at all. But the earthly immortal realm was not possible. As for the world behind the everlasting city, he was worried to death. They were too strong and were no longer in the same place. Magnitude, just in case the other party has some idea. I don't have any resistance in Tianyuan world. I can't even struggle. Rest assured. Li Yun comforted a few people and said slowly the road back to Tianhuang Eternal City has been cut off for a long time. If they can go back, they won't stay in Tianyuan realm all the time. So that's it? When Meng Qingzi heard these words, his frown gradually relaxed. Although the everlasting city is terrifying, it is in the final analysis a homeless force. What is there to be afraid of? It's only the late emperor. Can a true immortal jump out? Senior. Meng Qingzi came back to his senses and asked softly who is the third person who came out from the place of true immortal inheritance. Li Yun didn't answer. Instead, a hand reached out. Meng Qingzi. I just had an imperial weapon, now it's gone? I only know 2 people. And there is another one, right next to me, whose feelings are worth 1 piece of imperial armament and 1 Hongxian. Do you think you only learned about Hongxian? Li Yun had a good time, and without the slightest hint of surprise, he said, doesn't the eternal city count? The world behind the everlasting city and the news that the everlasting city cannot return to its original world are each priceless. This information is top secret to the outside world and can cause an uproar. If you get an imperial weapon in exchange, it can be said that you will make a lot of money. Meng Qingzi. The conscience of heaven and earth. I have never thought about finding out the news about the everlasting city. Just thinking about it, I can't afford to provoke such a terrifying force. Even if I borrow some courage, I don't want to go against them. But every message you just sent was charged. Li Yun shrugged and said indifferently. Fantasy, me. Create a secret building at the beginning. Author, Mavericks Flying. Chapter 277. Well. Meng Qingzi's expression froze. He slowly turned his head and looked at Ao Xian with helpless eyes. The information revealed is self-evident. I have no choice but to look at you next. Ao Xian understood. Without any hesitation, he turned his palm and placed an ancient book in front of Li Yun. He cupped his hand and said, please also ask the seniors to inform the juniors about the people behind. Easy to say. Li Yun picked up the ancient book and took a look. It recorded the entire content of an emperor's scripture, as well as the experience of a great emperor, and his insights into various realms. In terms of value, it has surpassed a complete emperor's scripture. In the palm of his hand, lifting it gently, a stream of light flew out and fell into Ao Xian's hand. A lot of information was recorded in it. These are the people who came out one after another from the place of true immortal inheritance. Some were seriously injured, and some were unscathed. You can decide for yourself. Li Yun said lightly. Thank you, senior. Ao Xian took a cursory glance at the contents and was overjoyed. After roughly writing down the contents, he gave the jade slip to Meng Qingzi. He came up with this idea, and he was also the one who was good at setting up formations. Next, he gave the jade slip to Meng Qingzi. Meng Qingzi needs to take action, and he can help. Of course. He will not give up Yang Qiu's previous method. After all, the senior said. In 1 hour, the true immortal inheritance will appear. Calculate the time. Dragon Clan, the current clan leader, is about to arrive. When he arrives, he will let him enter the Tianji building and act as a navigation guide for himself. With the guidance of his seniors, he can make a lot of money with less talk. As long as he comes out before Fang Han, he will be rewarded. You can cooperate with Meng Qingzi. Then, take a 2-pronged approach. It will be difficult even if you don't develop. But he ignored that in the jade slip, the last message clearly recorded that the name of the last living being to come out was Ao Xian. Senior, Junior has something I want to ask Senior. At this time, Fang Han, who had not spoken much, took a step forward. After he spoke, his eyes inadvertently glanced at the 2 great emperors next to him. The meaning behind his words was self-evident. Good. Li Yun nodded. He stretched out one hand and flicked in the air. There was a bang. Aoxian and Menkingzi were thrown out before they could react. Since the customer has requirements, he will naturally satisfy them. Senior. Little friend Fang Han. Menkingzi and Aoxian looked very wonderful. What's going on? What kind of news did Fang Han want to buy, and why did he avoid the two of them? Sorry, two seniors. Fang Han said in his heart. He was too weak, and Menkingzi and Aoxian were with him not for his own potential, but for the true immortal inheritance in his hands. For the sake of his own life, he had to be on guard against some things. After all, he was like an ant in the eyes of the emperor, and it was impossible to plot against them, but they only needed a thought to plot against him. Fang Han had experienced the revenge of genocide, and he may have entrusted his life and fortune to two great emperors whom he had known for less than a month. More importantly, these two great emperors did not seem to be good men and women. Especially Menkingzi. Seeing that he had gotten a good thing, he was jealous. The chance of taking action is over 90%. Seniors and juniors want to know whether they can obtain the inheritance left by their ancestors, and Fang Han said. He turned and glanced outside the door. It is blocked by the Tianji Tower. No one outside can see him. But he could see the outside clearly now. After taking a glance outside, he turned around and continued, and, can this junior leave alive? He did not ask how he could obtain the inheritance of the true immortal. Ask instead. Can I obtain the inheritance of a true immortal? This question. It is undoubtedly very tricky. As long as the seniors say so. Then he will definitely be able to get the most important thing left by his ancestor without any risk. An emperor-level item. Li Yun said. Outside the Tianji building. Menkingzi and Aoxian looked at each other. They are two great emperors. Being tricked by a junior? If this spreads out, where will the dignity of the two of them go? What news does Fang Han want to buy? Menkingzi said in a deep voice. He stared at the Tianji Tower without blinking, trying to see the scene inside. Unfortunately, the final result disappointed him. The Tianji Tower seemed to be no longer in this world. There was chaos in front of him. Even if you become an emperor, you still can't see through anything. Could he be plotting against both of us? Aoxian looked ugly. He is the Dragon Emperor, invincible throughout the ages, and the invincible opponent in the world. Besides the senior poster, who else is his opponent? It's just Fang Han. He doesn't take it seriously yet, but if he bought some information from the senior poster, that's not necessarily the case. Probably not. Menkingzi thought in his mind. Others don't know about Fang Han's trump card, but he knows it very well. It's just a jade pendant. He used it once before, and now he has two more times left. He doesn't want to provoke Fang Han. But he wants to come. Neither does Fang Han. He will take the initiative to plot against himself and others. After all, his jade pendant will be used less once. Once the times are gone, he will be a piece of fish on the chopping board. It must be related to the inheritance of true immortals. Menkingzi said firmly. At the moment, Fang Han's importance is self-evident. But when he comes out of the place where the true immortal is inherited, he seems to be able to trick him. If he can get all the secrets of the true immortal inheritance from Fang Han, get them all out. Didn't you make a lot of money? When he came out, everything became clear. Aoxian said calmly. Do you think he will tell you? Meng. Kingzi squinted his eyes and said, don't blame me for not reminding you. In the land of true immortal inheritance, you must not provoke Fang Han, otherwise you will suffer. Joke. As the Dragon Emperor, I am responsible for defeating all enemies in the world. How could I be afraid of a junior? Aoxian didn't take Menkingzi's words to heart. He turned around and looked not far away. he saw a middle-aged man rushing over quickly, very fast, with a slightly hurried expression. The man came to Ao Xian, salute respectfully. Ao Hong, pay homage to the ancestor. Ao Xian stood with his hands behind his back, nodded his head indifferently, looked at the Tianji tower in front of him, and said, wait a while, when the people inside come out, you can enter the Tianji tower, and everything will be done according to my instructions. I understand. What? Ao Hong understands. The middle-aged man handed over. Very good. On Ao Xian's huge dragon head, his eyes narrowed, showing a satisfied look. After many preparations, it seems that they are going to come in handy. When Ao Xuanzi was satisfied, Fang Han strode away in the Tianji tower. Out. Is this coming out? Ao Xian and Meng Qingzi's expressions changed. The time is so short, it seems that there is not much news about Fang Han's purchase. At the same time, Li Yun sent Fang Han away. He stood up, glanced at the system panel, and said in his heart, System, purchase the inheritance left by ancestor Fang Han. Fantasy, me. Create a secret building at the beginning. Author, Mavericks Flying. Chapter 278. Ding. After deducting 8 million TNG points, the query of Fallen Immortal Ancient Palace was successful. Really? Li Yun showed a true expression. In the Zixuan world, many opportunities are related to immortals, and this ancient palace of falling immortals is the inheritance left by the ancestors of the Fang family. It's time to let this opportunity come to light. Li Yun muttered to himself. He raised one hand, and in the void, a little far away, a ray of light shot out, causing the void to shatter. They were separated by the boundless starry sky and spanned a world. With one finger, a large piece of it was shattered. Space. Boom. The void exploded. A piece of otherworldly wonderland suddenly appeared in the world. This is a strange scene. It is clearly far away in the horizon, but it seems to be close in front of you. No matter where in the world they are, Zhixian realm and Tianyuan realm are everywhere. From the beginning, you can see the scene above your head. In the fairyland, the palace is majestic, and ancient buildings stand one after another, with various scenes. In the central hall, there is a majestic figure in white, standing in the void, overlooking the world, although it is peaceful and waveless, but it is terrifying. It gives people a very shocking feeling. Countless people were deeply shocked. This is an afterimage, not the real body, and it has existed for countless years, but it seems that there is still a ray of life fluctuates, as if still alive. What's this? Some saint king raised his head and looked into the void, with a look of horror on his face, and said in shock, earthly immortal realm. The lower realm of creatures in the earthly immortal realm. This is no longer a secret. Whether it is the Zixuan realm or the Tianyuan realm, many people with powerful cultivation have already got a hint of it. It does have the aura of the creatures in the earthly immortal realm, but it is not the same. The phantom is probably very powerful, and I can't tell the difference. Many people shook their heads slightly. The strength of that phantom has surpassed the understanding of ordinary people. Even the great emperor did not give them such a huge pressure. True immortal inheritance. Dawang City. In a courtyard, Yang Jian was dressed in white and looked very excited. He looked up at the void and murmured to himself, did he appear so soon? Could it be that the owner of Tianji took action? In front of Tianji Tower, Ao Xian and Meng Qingzi stood side by side. The two emperors looked at Fang Han in front of them with smiles on their faces, but no matter how you looked at it, this smile was a bit dangerous. The two of them looked at Fang Han, trying to see what was different about him. Just when Ao Xian was about to ask, a mysterious wave swept across all directions. He looked up at the sky, and his eyes suddenly lit up. True immortal inheritance. It was the senior poster who took action. Ao Xian said excitedly. Before, the senior poster said that after an hour, the true immortal inheritance will be born. Now an hour has just passed, and the true immortal inheritance will be born immediately. Among them, if the senior poster did not take action, he is 101,000 disbelief. Ao Hong, enter the Tianji Tower quickly. Ao Xian ordered. Yes. Ao Hong nodded in agreement and strode towards the Tianji Tower. At the same time, Fang Han was also looking at the void. His eyes were different from others. There was a trace of light in his eyes when he looked at the phantom. Piety. If I guessed correctly, this phantom is my ancestor. The most legendary figure in the Fang family, he went from the Zixuan realm to the earthly immortal realm, and then defied heaven and became an immortal. Attack a true immortal. After paying a huge price, kill him. Looking at this kind of achievement, few people can achieve it throughout the ages. I will never let others take away what my ancestor left behind. Fang Han said firmly in his heart. In the palm of his hand, at some point, a jade slip appeared, which recorded countless information. If he acted according to the contents of the jade slip, he would be safe in the land of true immortal inheritance. Because this jade slip was made by the owner of Tianji. Inside the Tianji building, Li Yun took a general glance at the things in the fallen immortal ancient palace and got some understanding in his mind. Subsequently, he flicked his finger. Countless rays of brilliance floated out, and unknowingly, they entered the jade slips in the hands of everyone who came to Tianji Tower. Before, the jade slips Li Yun gave them were all blank. There is only one powerful prohibition in it. But now, the jade slips are not blank, he gives corresponding information based on each person and the resources spent. In the small courtyard, Yang Jian's face changed. He raised his palm, and a shining jade slip appeared out of thin air. It bloomed with thousands of rays of brilliance, like a small sundae. It was very dazzling. Holy Sun, this is. The middle-aged quasi-emperor took a step forward, looking at the jade slip with curiosity on his face. News from the senior poster. Yang Jian said something. His spiritual consciousness penetrated into it. This time, the restrictions in the jade slips disappeared. Countless contents emerged in it. Each message pointed to an opportunity, and also included various information in the true immortal inheritance. How to crack this formation? The methods of the senior poster are really mysterious. After reading the content from beginning to end, Yang Jian let out a sigh of relief, and his heart was filled with shock. This jade slip is too detailed. It's as if this true immortal inheritance is not a square. What was left by the ancestor of the family was left by the Tianji building master. Every opportunity that could easily be ignored was recorded in detail. Holy Sun, does what we want exist in the true immortal inheritance? The middle-aged quasi-emperor asked. They opened a space passage in Yugzu Palace and came from the earthly immortal realm to the Zixuan realm. The most important thing is the realization of the breakthrough of the true immortal. This is also their ultimate goal. If they can get this opportunity, whereabouts? When they enter the land of true immortal inheritance, they can avoid a lot of twists and turns. They can just go straight to the source of the target. If they don't have to fight with other people, they will avoid a lot of unexpected situations. Exist. Yang Jian nodded. He put away the jade slips, took a look at the brilliance rising into the sky in the desert city, and said the inheritance of the true immortal has appeared, and it's time for us to set off. As soon as he finished speaking, dense lines appeared below the entire small courtyard, and the light soared into the sky. A gap opened in the void, turning into a portal, filled with black holes. I don't know where it led. Yang Jian took the lead and walked into it. Behind him, the others in Yugzu Palace followed him in. The moment everyone saw the jade slip in their hand light up, The whole world seemed to be boiling. I don't know how many people rushed towards Zixuan realm. Among them are ancient emperors, powerful forces with profound foundations, and many loners. The weakest among them are also above the saint level. The inheritance of a true immortal is no small matter. Ordinary people cannot step into it at all. Those who are lower than the saints and step in hastily can only be treated as cannon fodder. The aftermath of a fight can affect a large number of people. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Fantasy, me. Create a secret building at the beginning. Author, Mavericks Flying. Chapter 279. In the purple mysterious world. Atop a vast expanse of mountains. Asgard floats. Fairy music was playing in the midst, and beauties from the yokai danced gracefully, with their robes and skirts flying. They all looked like fairies, with white clouds and mist lingering under their feet. It's like the Guangan Palace falling into the mortal world. Outside the palace, Luan birds are flying, as bright as a rainbow, spiritual birds are carrying sesame seeds, auspicious air is hanging down, longevity apes are offering peaches, the fragrance is overflowing, and countless ancient elixirs are swaying in the wind on the ground. The clouds are steaming and the clouds are awe-inspiring, the atmosphere is endless, and the smoke is gushing out to make people feel intoxicated. Beyond fairyland. Whoosh! 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 Countless divine lights broke through the sky, crossed the mountains and rivers, and rushed to this place. Various ancient chariots rumbled through the void, like countless gods descending, emitting a terrifying aura, bright and dazzling. Far away, there are also the white jade chariots that are as cold as immortals, the majestic and thick ancient sacred mountains, and the magnificent Kayang towers and Yu, suspended in the air, hidden among the clouds and mist. These are powerful forces coming from all walks of life. There are many powerful figures standing on them, the Qi and Blood Wan Yang, who are majestic and terrifying in the void. The true immortal inheritance was born. It caused a shock in the three worlds, and each force sent strong men to come, intending to get a piece of the pie. Further afield, you can vaguely see that countless people are coming. These big figures are all dazzling, carrying a brilliant power, and are incredibly powerful. The vast and majestic pressure shrouded the world. Its strength and power made people tremble in their hearts. Those who were slightly weaker would find it extremely difficult to even breathe. Have all the formations except the true immortal inheritance been broken by the senior poster? Above the clouds, an old man with golden light flowing all over his body, his hair shining brightly, and his whole body surrounded by the true fire of the sun, put his hands on his back, looked at the immortal palace not far away, and said softly. He was a quasi-emperor, as powerful as Wan Yang, flooded in all directions. There is no way to break the formation in the news I bought. Beside him, a middle-aged man's hair was disheveled and his eyes were filled with cold light. He shook his head slightly and held a pitch-black halberd in his hand. It was surrounded by black light and showed a heart-stopping killing intent. It was very, fear. The earthly immortal realm, Zixuan realm, Tianyuan realm, and the three realms are competing for an opportunity together. This is a big battle. Facing powerful enemies from the other two realms, I hope you will temporarily put aside the grudges between our two clans. The old man in golden robe said in a deep voice. Ken. The middle-aged man pondered for a moment and nodded slowly. I'll tell you the truth, what I, the Golden Crow clan, bought in the Tianji Tower was the opportunity for me to become emperor. I think you will do the same, and I hope you won't become my opponent. The golden-robed old man's body energy was steaming, and his blood energy was like a tsunami, rolling up thousands of huge waves. The fact that Ao Xian and Meng Qing became emperors made the Golden Crow ancestor unable to sit still. He went to Tianji Tower before to inquire about the inheritance of the true immortals. Is there a chance for him to become an emperor? The answer he got was, yes. Now, before the true immortal inheritance, he saw the quasi-emperor of the Ye clan. With his character, how could he not guess that the other party bought it from him? The same opportunity? In the inheritance of true immortals, there will definitely be ways to become emperors, but there will definitely not be too many. Supporting 2 or 3 people to become emperors is probably the limit. He is very worried that his opportunities will collide with Ye Kong's. Together, but even if he has this concern in his heart, he will not be stupid. He will take out the news about his purchase and compare it with Ye Kong. Because this is related to his wealth and life. Hopefully. Ye Kong responded indifferently. Before he finished speaking. On the sky. Boom. A loud noise came, and Qingming shook. In the distant sky. There was a black mountain, towering into the clouds, as black as ink, all surrounded by black clouds and mist. It was so overwhelming that it almost made people suffocate. There was flowing on it, and it was eternal. The aura of death. On the black mountain, ancient trees are towering and lush. There are countless black creatures running among them. Each creature carries a strong aura of death. On the top of the mountain, a headless figure wearing a black iron suit, tall and powerful, holding a bloody spear, driving the sacred mountain, rushing straight into the fairy palace without stopping for a moment. They are from the underworld. Some people exclaimed. To a certain extent, the Nether clan is an immortal race. Because this race cannot reproduce on its own and can only rely on spiritual communication after death. The conditions for the birth of each Nether clan are very harsh. It must be a land of extreme yin, or a place of ferocious evil. Precisely because of the harsh birth conditions, every Nether clan is extremely powerful and difficult to kill and destroy. And this Nether clan who controls the Black Mountain has already reached the level of strength in the quasi-emperor realm. Countless people have guessed what he was thinking when he came to the land of true immortal inheritance. He wants to become an emperor. Looking at the past and present and the future, it seems that no one has ever become an emperor among the Nether clan. People in the Nether clan, after entering the immortal palace. The next second, a great emperor's aura spread out, shaking the 9 heavens, and suppressing the 9 nether worlds. All things have spirits and must surrender. A long silver-white river spreads out from the end of the sky. The 2 majestic figures above were walking side by side. Their bodies were very hazy, shrouded in a layer of mist, and outsiders could not see their true faces. These 2 great emperors seemed to dominate the will of heaven and earth. Thousands of rays of light fell down from the boundless avenue, like waterfalls. Generally hanging in the sky, the splendor reaches the extreme. At this moment, there is silence in all directions. Infinite creatures, unable to control their bodies, fall to their knees one after another. No matter which realm these 2 great emperors belong to, no one dares to appear at this moment. Looking directly, you can only bow and salute. This is a sign of respect for a great emperor. Are the emperors here? The ancestor of the Golden Crow straightened his body and stood on the spot like a javelin. Even though the aura of the emperor was pressing on his shoulders like a mountain, he still never gave in. If he bent down, there would be cracks in his faith. This is for those who are preparing to become an emperor. For him, it is a big blow, and he may not be able to survive the disaster of becoming an emperor. After all, he bought the opportunity to become an emperor, but he may not be able to become an emperor 100%. Get in. Ye Kong's words were concise and concise. He glanced at the figures of the 2 great emperors, with solemn expressions. He raised his halberd, took 1 step forward, and disappeared between heaven and earth in an instant. The next moment, he appeared in front of the immortal palace. There were several quasi-emperors. Open the way with the 2 great emperors. The outside world is like a frying pan. Countless streams of light rise into the sky and condense into a piece of Huanyang. It is like the Tianhe bursting its banks and pouring towards the place where the true immortals inherit. After most people enter it, an inconspicuous void. Ao Xian and Meng Qingzi walked out. They looked at each other and saw the smile in each other's eyes. Fang Han, who had just been brought by them, had already entered the land of true immortal inheritance in advance. There are only 2 people left now. Just gave them space to display. Fellow Daoist men, you set up your formation here first, and when I return, we will kill all the people of the same level with you. Ao Xian said proudly. Waiting for your return. Meng Qingzi looked strange. He thought of the content in the jade slip, but didn't say much. He waved his hand and said, let's talk about it when you come back. I will come back as soon as I go. Ao Xian had no doubt that he was there. He nodded, turned around and rushed into the immortal palace. Fantasy, me. Create a secret building at the beginning. Author, Mavericks Flying. Chapter 280. In the fairy palace. Countless streams of light rushed into it. Each ray of light represented a powerful cultivator, densely packed like carps crossing a river. Even figures who did not move around in the world in the past appeared. Boom! The deafening roar was transmitted in the immortal palace, shaking the surroundings, and even the stars in the sky were trembling. Among them, there was a surging blood energy that swept across all directions and turned into a piece of Huanyang, as if an ancient demon god was resurrected from it, to destroy everything in time. Many people who have not yet stepped into the immortal palace can't help but stay away when they see this terrifying aura. They are not fools. If you sense this aura a little, you can guess that this is the action of a great emperor. Look around. In the immortal palace, there is a vast expanse of white, with murderous auras surging. Pillars of red blood penetrate the sky, penetrating the 9-layer sky and turning it into a chaotic sea of killing. There are countless figures wailing in it. Even the quasi-emperors are roaring, and even more imperial soldiers rise into the night, blooming with immeasurable light, and their power is earth-shattering. Boom! There was a loud noise. Suddenly, in the immortal palace, a golden scepter rose into the sky, representing the will of heaven and earth. The billowing murderous aura boiled like a tsunami, making the heavens tremble. Faintly, a statue could be seen. The majestic figure, surrounded by chaotic mist, stepped on the void, crushing the heaven and earth, holding a scepter, fighting against a black figure. As soon as the 2 people fought, the battle became fierce. The pieces of palace buildings and jade palaces were beaten into dust, there was confusion everywhere, and an unknown number of people died in the aftermath of their fight. Fortunately, the immortal palace was wide enough. Otherwise, just the fight between the 2 great emperors would be enough to destroy the entire immortal palace. How come there is a fight between the emperors so quickly? Many people in the outside world are terrified. The 2 figures in the battlefield carry an extremely terrifying murderous intention. They move their hands and feet, bursting out with unparalleled divine power, even if they are extremely far apart. It makes people unable to think of resistance. The fight between the 2 great emperors seemed to be a fuse. The next moment, rays of world-destroying fairy light burst out, exploding the universe and shattering the eternal blue sky. All the heavens and worlds seemed to be shattered, a peerless murderous intention like a surging tide, it drowned everything. A figure covered in blood rushed out of a palace. He was in a very embarrassed state, with all his bones broken, his hair disheveled, and his eyes filled with coldness. If he hadn't been the great emperor, he would have just been if someone ambushes you, you will die immediately. Old guy in the restricted area, you should have fallen a long time ago. You don't know the secret of the inheritance of the true immortal, and you dare to step in rashly. I really don't know how to write the word death. The Emperor Tai stood with his hands behind his back, like a peerless emperor, Wearing a purple gold crown on his head, his eyes were deep and unparalleled, and contained the scene of the destruction of the galaxy. He didn't see any unnecessary movements, but it seemed as if he had existed from eternity, and his aura was terrifying. Pull. Boom. Above his head, there was a blue-gold emperor's seal, which destroyed the sky and the earth, killed gods and immortals, went up against the sky, and smashed down at an emperor who walked out of the restricted area. From that moment just now, he finally realized, come on, why in the battle between Zhixian realm and Tianyuan realm, although they clearly crushed each other in terms of strength, they were still forced to do nothing. Behind the emperors of Tianyuan realm, there were the masters of Tianji building. How could I and others fight? For example, now. I just bought a piece of news from Tianji Tower, and relied on this piece of news to directly attack an old emperor who came out of the restricted area. The opponent was severely injured in an instant. Although he did not completely lose his combat power, the next step was not his. The opponent. A glimpse of the leopard. From this point, we can see the importance of the news from the Tianji Tower. The Emperor Tai thought to himself that he was not a weak one among the great emperors, but compared with the great emperors in the restricted area, he was still a little behind, but just such a piece of news. Not only did it close the gap between the two, it even gave him the upper hand. This was simply terrifying. King of Thailand. Outside the place of true immortal inheritance. Meng Qingzi stood in the void, his hair flying and his robes rustling. He recognized the person fighting inside. Although he had not fought against the Thai emperor, the three great emperors of the Zixuan realm, he had known it to some extent. Now, Emperor Tai appeared. Several others had probably entered the immortal palace. Although Meng Qingzi did not recognize the person who fought against Emperor Tai, it was certain that the other party must not have gone there. Passing the Tianji Tower, otherwise, how could we suffer such a big loss? An ancient existence that should be a restricted area. Meng Qingzi guessed in his mind. He glanced at the battlefield, and at this time, several great emperors took action. Some of these beings came from the restricted area of Tianyuan world, and some were native creatures from Zixuan world. There were also a few from the earthly immortal world. Many great emperors fought in the immortal palace, causing the battlefield to boil. Everyone who should go in should have gone in. A jade slip appeared in Meng Qingzi's hand. He glanced at the contents, and a narrow smile appeared on his face. He raised one hand without any extra movement. He waved his palm lightly in the void, and a strong wind came out of the air. Appeared, with supreme power, through all the people who had never entered the land of true immortal inheritance thousands of miles away. These people were just coming to watch the show. But next, he wanted to make a big move. How could anyone watch? What if someone tipped off the news? Call. The strong wind howls. The chariots, jade ships, shenzhous, juyu, and casual cultivators were all thrown away without any resistance. What happened? Many people didn't understand the situation. When they reacted, they had already landed in a wilderness. They looked up at the same time. There was confusion in their eyes, and some people were extremely angry. They were thrown out so directly. Anyone would be a little angry, even if the other party is a quasi-emperor, but it would be too arrogant to attack everyone at the same time. Whoosh! Someone flew up and wanted to return to the immortal palace. But just as he took off, a ray of imperial power escaped, and with a bang, the person who wanted to return the same way turned into a cloud of blood mist in the sky. The scene made countless people tremble. Their bodies felt like falling into an ice cellar. They suddenly understood that the person who threw them out was not an ordinary person, but a great emperor. What did this great emperor want to do? He didn't go to the immortal palace. They were fighting for opportunities, but instead threw out all the people watching the battle outside. This was obviously a big move. Thinking of the great emperors who were fighting in the immortal palace, Many people immediately shuddered. A terrible guess arose in my heart. Something big might happen soon.